Caused by polluted water. It has festered in Sudan's conflict areas where water infrastructure has been destroyed and in camps for displaced people. The epicenter of the outbreak right now is Tawila in North Darfur state. Hundreds of thousands of people recently fled there to escape the fighting in the nearby city of El Fasher. Aid workers who've set up clinics in Tawila told the BBC that the camps do not have enough latrines and clean water, that people are forced to drink from contaminated sources. The disease compounds the humanitarian crisis caused by the civil war, with scarce food supplies and a healthcare system on the point of collapse.
Nigeria's Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration and Control, Professor Majisola Adeye, has revealed plans to start the local production of vaccines for the country. Adeye says there's a need to do the same for the rest of the African continent. Addressing journalists in Abuja, Professor Adeye said the move was made possible following an approval by the World Health Organization at a meeting in Nigeria. Collins Nosa Atonghegbe has the story.
Professor Mojisola Adeye says the move is to help ensure that Africa gets the necessary supply of relevant vaccines to meet its needs so as to avoid instances of inadequate and delayed supply of vaccines at critical moments as was experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. She said Nigeria's quest, which began a few years back, was made possible after the country passed the required majority level 3 set by the World Health Organization before any nation or group may be given approval to go into standardized pharmaceutical medicines and vaccine manufacturing.
More than 100 aid agencies have accused Israel of continuing to block the humanitarian supplies from Gaza. Oxfam says over $2 million worth of supplies have been rejected. More than $1 million of aid for mothers and babies has been waiting to enter into Gaza for 5 months. The BBC's Imogen Folks has the story.
Many aid agencies say they have not had a single truck of supplies allowed into Gaza since March, when Israel first imposed its blockade. The more recent promise to let supplies in and create humanitarian corridors has not, the aid agencies say, improved things. Israel has introduced a new vetting process which requires aid agencies to provide detailed and often sensitive information about all their staff. Agencies who do not comply are now being turned away.
The U.S. State Department has announced that it has taken steps to impose visa restrictions on African, Cuban, Brazilian and Grenadian government officials and their families for what it described as their complicity in Cuba's overseas medical missions. Sharon Bryce-Pease has the details.
The State Department says it's targeting officials who were responsible for Cuban medical mission programs that it argued included elements of forced labor and the exploitation of Cuban workers. In a statement, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the steps were being taken to promote accountability for those who support and perpetuate what it views as exploitative practices, arguing that the scheme enriches the Cuban regime and deprived everyday Cubans of essential medical care that they desperately need in their homeland.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
With your sports news at this hour, 2 late goals and Madagascar a crucial 2-0 Chan victory, while a South African swimming sensation Tatjana Smith insists the nomination for awards remain special to her career. Details coming up at 12:30.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba.
Cette peur d'un point de non-retour nucléaire suffit-elle selon vous à légitimer une telle offensive, monsieur Talazi?
Absolument pas du tout. Cela fait plus de 30 ans que l'Israël crie haut et fort sur les toits, où il veut se faire entendre que l'Iran serait à 1 an pour obtenir l'arme nucléaire. Parfois, l'Iran serait à 6 mois, parfois l'Iran serait à 2 semaines pour obtenir son arme nucléaire. Et curieusement, jusqu'à ce jour, il n'y a toujours aucune preuve que l'Iran a obtenu cette arme nucléaire en dépit des déclarations d'Israël et de certaines puissances parfois.
Vue d'Afrique, du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, it is 12:08 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, an OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in.
Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa.
Today on hashtag Africa Update we ask the question, what do you think about legalizing prostitution in Africa? Do you see it as a positive step, or do you think it could bring more challenges? This is for looking at advocacy group Embrace Dignity and survivors of prostitution, having strongly opposed the recent proposal to legalize prostitution in South Africa. Share your thoughts and your views on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa, and send your voice notes and comments to +2763 as 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update us.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
The SABC is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Now, vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Our vendors are able to access this platform on our website. That's www.sabc.co.za/SABC/under e-tenders, or self-register at etender.sabc.co.za/ and follow the prompts. I'll visit SABC social media pages for more details.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
An attack on an e-hailing driver or drivers in South Africa is in the spotlight after a violent attack allegedly involving taxi operators and e-hailing drivers, which left one person dead and two others injured at the Maponya Mall in Soweto. That's in the south of Johannesburg in the country's Gauteng province. The Gauteng member of the Executive Council for Roads and Transport, Gidiboni Diale Tlabela, has visited the area and condemned the attack, describing it as senseless, unacceptable, and a direct threat to the safety and stability of the public transport system. And to speak to us further about this attack and the underlying tensions, we are now joined on the line by Vatuka. Well, Vatuka, we will try and get him on the line to join us and speak to us about that. Vatuka is a spokesperson for the e-hailing operators, and he'll unpack exactly what unfolded with regards to the loss of life and the reaction of the community in that regard. It is 11 after 12 Central African Time. Now, the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeye, has revealed plans for the commencement of local production of vaccines for Nigeria and the need of African countries. Speaking to a journalist in Abuja, Professor Adeye said the feat has been made possible following a WHO approval after meeting the necessary criteria. Channel Africa News correspondent in Nigeria, Collins Nusa Atohengbe, has more.
Professor Mojisola Adeye says the move is to help ensure that Africa gets the necessary supply of relevant vaccines to meet its needs so as to avoid instances of inadequate and delayed supply of vaccines at critical moments as was experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. She said Nigeria's quest, which began a few years back, was made possible after the country passed the required majority level 3 set by the World Health Organization before any nation or group may be given approval to go into standardized pharmaceutical medicines and vaccine manufacturing. Professor Adeyeye said when the World Health Organization came to inspect Nigeria's preparedness to commence vaccine manufacturing, the world body discovered that Nigeria had almost completed all that it needed to do to meet international standards required.
We are ready in terms of what is called the ninth module of function of global benchmarking is called lot release. It's for vaccine lot release. When they came for benchmarking last year, they looked at our books. What have we done in terms of preparation for lot release? We've almost finished everything.
The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, which is responsible for drug control in Nigeria, is collaborating with the Pharmaceutical Council of Nigeria is to ensure that the required standard is maintained. They will also keep a tab on the process so that all the expected monitoring facilities and control mechanisms are kept up to date, and when necessary, the Interpol could be called in as was done in the past to deal with any erring body. The registrar of the Pharmaceutical Council of Nigeria, Baba Shehu Ahmed, disclosed that the monitoring system set in motion will help to make sure that everyone involved works within set limits. He said previously manufacturers often closed their factories to avoid inspection and possible indictment for poor performance, but he says that has changed now with the present status.
There is this agreement to the fact that PCN, NAFDAC, will regularly even come freely into the market. Before, when they say you are coming, they will close and run away. But now they are ready to open their doors because they know that they are now under the radar of regulation. Interpol has capacity to bring down any website in 194 countries. Incidentally, we have had one situation we reported and it was taken on. In the course of inspecting those facilities, you need an IT expert. Because many a times when you go to their place, what you see in the front end may be different from what is at the back end. So you need an IT expert who interrogate the back end of the software.
Looking at the road to reaching the maturity level 3, Professor Adeyeye said the desire to get to the ultimate last level in the system that would guarantee the full international standard will be relentlessly pursued.
And that report by Collins Nusa Atohengbe. And Collins is our Channel Africa news correspondent in Nigeria.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
An attack on e-hailing drivers in South Africa is in the spotlight after a violent attack allegedly involving taxi operators and e-hailing drivers, which left one person dead and two others injured at the Maponya Mall in Soweto in the country's Gauteng province. Now, the Gauteng member of the Executive Council for Roads and Transport, Gidiboni Diale Tabela, has visited the area and condemned the attack, describing it as senseless, unacceptable, and a direct threat to the safety and stability of the public transport system. And to speak to us further about this attack and the underlying tensions, we are joined on the line by Batuka Mbelengwa, the spokesperson for the e-hailing operators. Batuka, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Afternoon, thank you for having me.
This is not the first time we're speaking about this, you and I, and, talk about this attack and the continued tensions that, they died down for a while and then something drastic happens and there's loss of life, and then this is now in the spotlight again. What happened last night?
I think what happened last night was a overspill of frustration that has constantly been building up and overspilling actually quite consistently for the past decade. What happened last night was an avoidable, unnecessary loss of life. And as much as the people who shot and put the car on fire should be jailed, I believe that our leaders are equally responsible for failing to intervene, because this is not the first murder. It's not the first burning. It's not the first shooting. I don't know how many will be enough, how many will constitute a satisfactory number for our state to intervene.
Now, talk to us about these underlying tensions. The situation between taxi operators, and then these are the minibus taxi operators, and the e-hailing drivers.
I'd say the tensions aren't necessarily that. There are underlying tensions that exist between e-hailing operators and minibus drivers. I'd qualify the problem that the minibus taxi industry has been getting undermined continuously for the past decade. You see, when you have e-hailing emerge and there's no control on the amount of cars being put on, but the minibus taxi industry has got more structure. They've got start points, they've got end points, they've got associations. It's not right for us to simply try and blame the minibus taxi industry. What we actually need to do is regulate the industry so that everybody's participation is well structured, the boundaries are well set, and we're able to identify when people step out of line too quickly, extremely quickly, because this compromises society, this compromises lives, this compromises industries and businesses. Maponya Mall is an economic hub. It employs a lot of people, and activity has halted right now. I'm right now on the ground outside Maponya Mall. Within eyesight, there's at least 300 million rand in vehicles within eyesight. I can tell you that we've got convoys of drivers coming from Victoria, the East Rand and the West Rand, on their way right now to support and to offer support. And the situation is just going to continually, you're going to see more assets on the ground that are doing nothing. And this is the source of the frustration, an overly funded industry whereby e-hailing companies like Uber have the mandate to without relenting, keep adding vehicles onto the platform. And this saturation is why there is such an undermining aspect that exists, which culminates in violent attacks.
Now, talk to us about these fortnight meetings between the MEC and stakeholders. Now, clearly, it doesn't seem to be working. What is the purpose of these meetings with the MEC and stakeholders? And what are they coming up with to quell the issues or to deal with the issues that you're highlighting?
Look, I think the MEC and government holistically needs to stop stakeholder engagement and start behaving as the custodians of industry. We've been engaging, we've made recommendations, written, oral, we submitted everything. At a point in time, government needs to act on the recommendations we've made. At the point in time, government needs to execute its own vision for this country. At the point in time, government needs to curate the kind of transportation industry that will be beneficial to our economy and not beneficial to our graveyards.
Have you managed to speak to meet with the taxi association in the area and just have discussions with them, especially after this incident?
Have I managed to speak to?
Taxi association. The taxi associations, have you managed to speak to any of the leaders there?
No, I personally haven't. I think other meetings have happened, other dialogues are happening, but we've had many dialogues of this nature. What needs to be happening is that police need to be investigating who executed the attack. One, two, there should be no discussion around that. This is an illegal attack. It's murder.
Yeah.
It's merciless murder. We don't need to be discussing such things away. And what needs to be discussed is how government's going to take control of this industry. How government's going to halt the onboarding of vehicles at an unrelenting rate. Because what happens is that guys they sit idle for hours. They don't get any requests.
Yeah.
And when they don't get any requests, they start hunting for business. And then this creates a problem. Like I stated, within eyesight here, just at Maponya Mall, within eyesight, at least 500 million rand in vehicles just parked on the side of the road. Probably another 500 in convoy here. This is all domestic investment. This money comes from our homes.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we are going to.
By Uber.
Batuka, unfortunately, we have run out of time and are going to have to leave it there for today. But thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. That's Batuka Mbelengwa, the spokesperson for the e-hailing operators, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
As South Africa marks Women's Month, celebrating the resilience and achievements of women, advocacy group Embrace Dignity and survivors of prostitution have strongly opposed a recent proposal by EFF leader Julius Malema to legalize prostitution. Nozizwe Madlala Rutledge, co-founder of Embrace Dignity, expressed disappointment, stating that legalizing prostitution would effectively endorse pimping, brothel keeping, and the commodification of women's bodies for men's sexual gratification. She now joins us on the line. Nozizwe, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu, and happy Women's Month to all women of Africa.
Well, happy Women's Month to you too. Now, just reading this verbatim in terms of, what effectively you're speaking of, the pimping, brothel keeping, and the commodification of women's bodies for men's sexual gratification. Talk to us. Exactly the legalization of prostitution, how may it entrench systemic exploitation rather than alleviate it?
So, Embrace Dignity, together with our international partners, are part of a movement for the abolition of prostitution. We believe that prostitution is violence against women and children. It is mainly women and children who are prostituted. We know that there are transgender people, there are men who are also prostituted. This is a system that targets the vulnerable, male or female, and it is violent inherently. Women who we work with as survivors inform our position. They tell horror stories of their experience in the industry. They tell us we have scars both inside and outside from being prostituted in the sex industry. Now, why would you consider this as a profession, and why call for its legalization instead of protecting the victims, the vulnerable who experience this violence? Legalization has failed in countries where they've passed such a law, the Netherlands, Germany. It has failed to protect women. What it has done, it has expanded the industry. It has brought a situation where trafficking is thriving because in order to meet the demand, they go to countries, especially like countries in Africa, where unemployment is high. Over 40% of Black women in my own country are unemployed. So these people go to those countries and they traffic them to countries like Germany, going there in the hope of a better life, and instead they find themselves in brothels where they have to service sometimes up to 10 men a night in order to pay for their lodgings and the drugs, because we have learned from the survivors that they cannot cope without having to take some form of substance. Some of these women end up working for the drugs in order to maintain the habit, whereas they started off wanting to put food on the table. Legalization in Germany, for example, has not led to more women registering, which actually just shows that it is not an effective system of protecting women. Total decriminalization also hasn't worked. One particular country that we know passed such a law is New Zealand, but the law hasn't stopped trafficking. Instead, what it has done, it has made the demand even greater, and children are targeted in that country.
Now, let's take a look at the Sankara Equality Law, and are you able to explain it in more detail for us?
Yes, what Embrace Dignity and our partners globally are calling for is this equality law. This is a law that was passed in Scandinavian countries. It was pioneered in Sweden. Soon thereafter, Norway and Iceland followed. So it was initially called the Nordic model. But subsequently, it was adopted by Northern Ireland, Canada, and more recently, France and Israel. It is growing in popularity. In Africa, in South Africa, the survivors have termed it the Sankara model after Thomas Sankara. And I'll explain why they've called it the Sankara model. But what it actually does, it protects the victims. It decriminalizes only those who are trapped in the system of prostitution and offers them exit pathways. It maintains the buying of sex, a criminal offense, because that is what creates the demand. Men exercising power and control and buying and renting women's bodies for their sexual gratification. It also maintains pimping as a crime, as well as brothel keeping. In this way, it is a strategy, in effect, a very effective strategy for ending the demand and providing exit pathways. You might want to know, how do they pay for the exit? They fine the men. There are very high penalties for men who are caught buying sex, and many of them have the means. They drive smart cars. Some of them are actually judges. Others are members of parliament. They are people with money. Some are businessmen. So they can pay for their exit pathways.
Yes. Now, you've called on the EFF to reconsider their stance in light of Thomas Sankara's views on prostitution as a reflection of societal exploitation. How do you plan to engage with political parties like the EFF to shift the narrative towards the abolition rather than legalization during Women's Month and beyond?
We're looking forward to an engagement with all political parties. And in a way, I do thank Malema for putting this out in the public domain. It actually means that other leaders must also come public and state their position. We find that political leaders often don't want to talk about this because it divides the voters. And now with South Africa coming towards elections next year, we want to hear from more parties talking about this. But going back to the EFF, we actually identified the EFF as a potential partner, as a Marxist-Leninist party, or a party that describes itself as a party that is fighting colonialism in Africa, and a party for economic freedom. We went to their headquarters in Johannesburg. We took with us a delegation of survivors because we wanted for them to hear directly from the survivors what their lived experience is in the industry, how they are harmed by the industry, and what it is that they would like to see. Unfortunately, as you hear, we are disappointed that it doesn't seem as if they listened. It doesn't seem as if Malema is hearing the cries of African women. And in actual fact, it raises a question about the influence of the industry. We think the sex industry has entered every institution in our country and on the continent. If political leaders can make such a statement as calling for the legalization of exploitation, it actually says to us, maybe, who knows, their pockets might be receiving money from the sex industry. I would like to hear from the EFF who's funding them. Well, because where would they come up with such a position?
Well, Nozizwe, we have run out of time and are going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update. That is Nozizwe Matlala-Routledge, co-founder of Embrace Dignity, joining us on the line. It is 12:30 Central African Time, and our news headlines up next with Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. Making headlines, the Action SA party in South Africa has joined the list of entities withdrawing from the upcoming national dialogue due to concerns on the logistics of hosting it. The medical charity MSF says Sudan is experiencing the worst cholera outbreak the country has seen in years, killing more than 2,400 people. And finally, the U.S. State Department has announced that it has taken steps to impose visa restrictions on African, Cuban, Brazilian and Grenadian government officials and their families for what it described as their complicity in Cuba's overseas medical missions. I will have details on these and other stories at 1 o'clock.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
With the latest sports news at this hour, I'm Neto and ETO Chemani. Kicking off with football news. 2 late goals and Madagascar a crucial 2-0 victory over the Central African Republic CAR in their Group B clash at the African Nations Championship, Chene Pamoja 2024 in Dar es Salaam. The match played at the Benjamin Mkapa National Stadium on CAR's Independence Day, so both sides battle for survival after failing to win their opening 2 fixtures. The result moves Madagascar into 7th place in Group B, leapfrogging CAR with 4 points from 3 matches. In swimming news, South African swimming sensation Tajana Smith insists being nominated for awards remain one of the most special feelings of her career as she competes for yet another SA Sport Awards double. Smith, who became the most South African Olympian after her gold and silver medals at the 2024 Paris Olympics, is among the finalists for the SA Sports Woman of the Year and SA Sports Star of the Year at this year's awards set for the 23rd of August.
Definitely not. It's always extra special. Every nomination tells a different story and a different journey and the growth of us as athletes. So, yeah, it's always special to be celebrated by your country and be recognized for the things that you've achieved.
Having announced her competitive retirement immediately after Olympic last year, the Johannesburg-born breaststroke specialist admits the decision remains a battle not to go back to.
Even though I was very at peace with the decision of retiring, there's definitely moments where you obviously, even sometimes now with the World Champs, being on, watching it and really just missing the sport so much. I wasn't oblivious that I would definitely be having to fight myself mentally to not want to go back or regretting my decision. But I knew that at that moment I made the decision, I was at peace. So it's just holding on to that and really just finding out what it is that I love outside of swimming.
In rugby news, South Africa's national women's rugby team received their official send-off to the 2025 Women's Rugby World Cup in Johannesburg on Wednesday evening. The squad will travel to the United Kingdom on Thursday ahead of the first match in Pool D against Brazil in 10 days' time. The recent victory over New Zealand Black Ferns 15 has given the Springbok women a great deal of confidence. But according to Vice Captain Babalo Lacha, they are not getting ahead of themselves, while Lock Danielle Lochner says she's looking forward to the pool games.
We're not looking too far ahead. I think it's important for us not to get lost in all the noise, make this, make that, win that, win that. I think the key thing really is to focus on the first game, to ensure that we do well in the first game. I think from there we can then start looking at other games.
I think everybody is really, really excited. I think knowing that, being part of the 32, being named in the 32, everybody can breathe a little bit better and sleep a little better at night. But obviously the hard work has only just begun. But yeah, that last game against the Black Ferns 15 gave us a massive confidence boost. So yeah, really excited to see what the World Cup pool games have in for us.
And finally, in golf news, the 2025 Live Golf Individual Championship will be decided at this week's regular season finale. Live Golf in Naples with current season long points leader Joaquim Niemann hoping to clinch the title against defending individual champion John Ram at the club at the Cheltenham Hills. For any sports stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I'm Neto and ETO Chemani.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Stella Longwe. Pamalonje.
Palitusokoma pano pamalonje kumvera nyimbo za mu Africa kusangalala kupeza moyo akuti kumva moyo kuti kuyenda bwino pano pamalonje ndiyetu apa tili ndikatswiri oyimba ameneyu ndikatswiri wa dziko la Malawi amene akukhala mdziko la South Africa ndipo amayimba amene akuti ndi Big Nick Malawi yatuzati kuti kodi moyo wanu woyimba ukuyenda bwanji mu Johannesburg?
Moyo woyimba ukuyenda bwinobwino kwambiri. Chiliyonse chikutheka ndithu bwinobwino.
Ayi aziboneka yonse chikutheka mofa magrasi anu apa akuti kumenya yonse aziboneka zona azikutheka ndithu mu Johannesburg.
Malonje panthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo. Lowiruka ndi Stella Longwe. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, I'm Nosipo Zumaina. Business News this hour. Some of the young South African women attending the P20 Women's Parliament have expressed concerns about the continuing decline of females in employment opportunities and economic participation. The theme for this year's event is Accelerating Equality, Sustainability and Shared Growth. Group Executive for Corporate Affairs and Sustainability at Bushveld Minerals, Sibu Majosi, says this is a burden facing young women.
There's a disproportionate burden on young women from an unemployment and economic participation perspective. Young women are particularly vulnerable with NEET rates at 48.1% for young women. Those that are wondering what NEET is, it's not in education, employment or training compared to 42.2% of men. So it really is a disproportionate burden on young women.
The youngest Director General of Civil Aviation in the world and on the African continent from Sierra Leone Civil Aviation Authority, Musayero Barry, has held the ICAO Next Generation of Aviation Professionals Global Summit, currently underway in Durban, South Africa. She says it is a fantastic opportunity and in particular to show young people that they too can hold the high-powered positions in the industry.
Africa has all the potential, my sister. We have young professionals, we have a passion, we have a location that makes us the center of the world, not only for connecting people by air transport, but for trade. So Africa needs to be intentional about our role in the sector.
The Congolese mining company sanctioned by the United States this week says it rejects allegations linking it to armed groups and mineral smuggling in turbulent Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions against a Congolese cooperative over what it calls the illicit sale of critical minerals smuggled from the mineral-rich region of Rubaya. The U.S. also sanctioned Congolese armed group aligned with Congo's military, which Washington said controlled mining sites in Rubaya from 2022 to 2024, and the two Hong Kong-based exporters. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu set a target of 7% annual economic growth by 2027, aiming to lift millions out of poverty and expand the economy to 4 times its current size by 2030. Since coming into office in 2023, Tinubu has ended petrol and electricity subsidies and twice devalued the naira currency to boost Nigeria's decade-long sluggish output. However, those steps triggered the worst cost of living crisis in a generation have yet to deliver faster growth. And finally, WhatsApp says Russia is trying to block its services because the social media messaging app owned by Meta Platforms offered people rights to secure communication and vowed to continue trying to make encrypted services available in Russia. Russia has started restricting some Telegram and WhatsApp calls, accusing the foreign-owned platforms of failing to share information with law enforcement in fraud and terrorism cases. Your financial indicators: one US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 533. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 30. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 47, and in Zambia, it's 27 kwacha 07. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 40. Russia is 79 rubles 52. China is 87 rupees 51. China is 7 yuan 18, and in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 53. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,347 and platinum at $1,341 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $65.89 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipo Soma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water-secure future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12:44 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. An investigation report into the Batuka camp in Kenya has revealed that despite training given by the British Army to its soldiers, as well as control measures being put in place, the reality is that transactional sexual activity by UK personnel in Kenya is still happening at a low to moderate level. The investigation covered a period of more than 2 years, examining conduct at the base dating back to July 2022. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Saitabwa Kanturi, author and advocate at the High Court of Kenya. Saitabwa, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Yes, good afternoon.
Now, looking at...
Thank you for having me.
Great. Now, looking at the legal aspects of this report, wasn't the investigation thoroughly done, or are there some aspects to it that were not touched on?
Yes, Lulu, as you know, the investigations, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
It will be very good.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, you are breaking a little bit, but I think I got the gist of your question. So, as you know, the investigations are still ongoing. They're now at the parliamentary stage, but Parliament has already had the investigations on the preliminary investigations on the ground. That is in the areas affected, and also some of the persons who are complaining concerning the activities of the British training in Kenya. But the investigations are still ongoing. I believe there was a session yesterday which was not attended by the people from the British side, and therefore the investigations are yet to be concluded. They're inconclusive.
Now, despite the UK's Ministry of Defence banning its forces from using sex workers abroad, it is still ongoing. Now, what can authorities do to stop this from happening and continuing?
So Lulu, maybe the first thing we need to mention to our viewers is that what is prohibited is not necessarily sexual contact, sexual contact between British forces and local ladies, so to speak. So what is prohibited, and this is not really a legal issue per se, it is a disciplinary issue, because prostitution in both Kenya and the UK is not, strictly speaking, is not illegal. Okay, so what is illegal is the commercialization of prostitution. And therefore, if you are looking at it strictly, the British officers who may have fraternized or in any other way related with commercial sex workers are not breaking local laws here in Kenya. Strictly speaking, if they are paying for sex, they are not breaking any law, because under Kenyan law, what is illegal is earning a living from prostitution. So if you are a female or a male prostitute and you're making money from prostitution, or you are a pimp, that is illegal. But paying for sex, strictly speaking, which is what perhaps the British officers could be accused of doing, is not illegal in Kenya, and it is also not illegal in the UK. But what this is not a criminal issue, it is a disciplinary issue, because we are dealing with disciplined forces. And so in their standing orders, they have prohibited British officers, its officers from fraternizing with. Of course, it's a difficult issue, because to what extent do you survey? Do you monitor? Do you supervise? But of course, it is an issue that comes up from time to time, because we have British officers here, the men with a bit of purchasing power.
Saitabo, unfortunately, the connection is not the greatest. We keep missing out on key, points that you are making. But hopefully, we'll be able to continue with just a wrapping up question. For Kenyan women who have fallen pregnant by British soldiers, what legal recourse is there, if any? And clearly there could be a distinction. All right, we seem to have lost Saitabo. All right, Saitabo, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Clearly there should be a distinction between, souls there.
Yes, so yes, there is a distinction between just normal relationships between men and women that does not include commercial sex, or what the UK government has called transactional sex. So that is what the UK government has prohibited its officers from doing. However, the line is very narrow. There's a very thin line, because complaints have also arisen between British officers and women who are not necessarily commercial sex workers, just women who had relations with British officers, which later, for whatever reason, as relationships tend to do, turn sour. And this often leads to complaints from mostly the women. And especially now, if you have issues of children who are sired from such unions, then the issue becomes the protection of those children, so that the children are not destitute or abandoned. But as I was saying earlier, I believe it's a fairly dicey issue. I've looked at the British report, I've looked at their report, and I've seen that they are also having a problem. They're having a problem in distinguishing between commercial sex or transactional sex as it were, and just normal relations, because the problems are cross-cutting, whether it is commercial sex or just normal relations. The problems that are the risk factors to the British officers, which they have identified, including extortion, including issues of complaints about children who are sired, and many other issues, can arise whether the relationship was a commercial one or whether it was just a normal relationship. Of course, there are also issues of privacy between how do you handle the privacy of the officers, the privacy of the women involved, because you cannot stop adults from engaging in consensual sexual matters. These are matters of personal preferences, personal human rights, privacy, and so on. But of course, where there's purely a commercial aspect to it, there's a greater factor, because then there is an issue perhaps of exploitation of the British officers of their higher economic standing, and of course we know that some of these women come from very poor. The British training base is located in one of the most remote parts of this country, and poverty levels are fairly high. And so there's always a case or a chance that the British officers could abuse their purchasing power disparity between them and women.
Well, Sai Tabua, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We are going to leave it there for today.
Thank you so much, Lulu.
That was Sai Tabua Kanchori, author and advocate of the High Court of Kenya, joining us on the line.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
New Zealand says it is weighing up whether to recognize a Palestinian state. It comes after Australia, France and the UK said they would recognize a Palestinian state at a UN General Assembly meeting in September. New Zealand's Prime Minister Christopher Luxon says Israel's leader Benjamin Netanyahu has lost the plot. Meanwhile, amid the chaos of war in Gaza, a different sound arises: music. In the tent camps and school shelters where families seek refuge, melodies now offer a rare sense of comfort and normalcy. More in this Reuters report.
From inside a tent in the ruins of Gaza City, a song.
The idea of this project coming from some of my friends bring a guitar, and I take the guitar and play, and all the kids gathering around me. And in these moments, we forget the war. So this is coming light in my head. Why not we make some activity, music activity, despite this war? I call my colleagues in Edward Said Conservatory about this activities, and they told me we are with you.
Ahmed Abu Amsha is one of a handful of teachers from the Edward Said National Conservatory of Music who have continued to offer children music classes in the midst of a harrowing war. For the past 6 months, he has been living and working in the city's central district, along with colleagues. They also go into kindergartens for sessions with small children. The Edward Said Conservatory was founded in the West Bank and opened a branch in Gaza 13 years ago. Before the current war, Israel sometimes granted the best students exit permits to travel outside Gaza to play in the Palestine Youth Orchestra, the conservatory's touring ensemble. A video released in January by a teacher shows the Gaza school in ruins. Now, classes are in tents, or in a bullet-marked classroom of Gaza College. They are short on instruments and often improvise. Ismail Daoud is another of the teachers.
Music in war represents for me and for all the students whom we teach, it represents hope and an exit from the atmosphere of war.
Sarah Al-Suwarki is learning to play the guitar.
I really am into music. I love discovering new genres, but more specifically rock. I'm very into rock.
The music is a respite for the children, who are now accustomed to hearing other sounds. Airstrikes, wails of grief at funerals, and cries of hunger. Palestinian health authorities say Israel's military campaign has killed more than 61,000 people, including more than 1,400 going to aid points to get food. Israel says Hamas is responsible for the suffering after it started the war, with the October 2023 attack from Gaza when its gunmen killed 1,200 people and seized 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies.
And that was a Reuters news report. And we say, well, it's a happy Thursday to Matego. Hello, how are you? The Upside team is here.
The Upside is indeed here. So as we enter the 1 p.m. hour, we're going to begin the show. So we're still acknowledging themes around Women's Month, as acknowledged in South Africa. And we're going to look at disability and women living with disabilities, access to opportunities, access to just basic human rights and needs, and are those being met? So we're going to be speaking to a woman who's facing some challenges, but we also really want to highlight how we can possibly break barriers for women that are living with disabilities in South Africa. Also, looking forward, I'm very, very excited for this one. We're going to be speaking to the iconic sculptor, Peter Gantuli, who is just one of our most prized when it comes to his artistry. So we're going to be speaking to him. It looks like there is much to celebrate when we look at the Melrose Gallery as they present the Junkyard Dogs, as they call it. It's an exhibition that is all about uniting South Africans and sort of, uniting artists to speak in one voice. So just a few things to look forward to.
It's the Upside coming up at the top of the hour with Matiko Musito and Tebuho Likuleni. For myself and the Africa Update team, that's our producer Tracy Bumgard, our technical operator Ndando Lutuli, and social media Sfiso Sope and talent Butelezi. It's been a good one. Let's do this again tomorrow and continue with us on our socials. Bye-bye.